Rudy. How's it going?
Hi, Scott. I'm very good. And you?
Very good and very excited for this conversation. I think that it seems like me and you could probably talk for a very long time based on our little preamble before recording, but maybe to just kind of kick things off, what does the word regeneration mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good one because there's a lot of misunderstanding about, what does regeneration mean? And also, I think there is a difference between the understanding in the US and regeneration as we see it here in Europe, for example. In US, regeneration is more about green tech and sustainability and all that. While here in Europe, it's really the essence of regeneration is all about putting life at the center of every act and every decision that we do. So, which means it's all about our connection to nature, and also how can we, build things that are conducive to life, that are contributing to life, that go away from the mindset of extraction and go
Mm.
into the mindset of contribution. So in a very
And
simple way. Yeah?
uh, I love that. And I think, one of the things I've heard you talk about is, regeneration can be applied to ourselves. And it's not just a, do good in nature. It is a concept that we can think about as we navigate our own realities.
Yes, exactly. So the origin of regeneration comes a bit of the regenerative agriculture, of regenerating the soil. But the way we applied it with what we do with RegenerateX in our business is like, how can we regenerate ourselves? We see our own beings as a soil. We see our own beings as a Garden of Eden. So how can I, create my life, and how can I consider every thought that comes in my mind as to make sure that it's a positive thought that contributes to something, and that is not an addictive thought, or that is a thought that comes from a belief system that I no longer identify with, or comes from an assumption that is not real any longer. So it's really the essence of like my authentic self and the connection with nature and my relationship with others.
Yeah, I think, this has kind of been a big theme in my own experience, and one that really, when you start to do the consciousness work, you realize that so many things that we thought were things that we just inherited unconsciously. It's just a bunch of ideas. And when we start to go inward and we start to do the regenerative work, as you talk about, we start to be able to actually have choice. I heard a quote recently that just was really simple yet powerful, which is awareness creates choice. And it's my experience. And I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the consciousness work is when we come back to that authentic self, the natural way of ourselves is to be connected to nature, is to be loving, is to want to contribute, is all of those things. And it's almost like, yes, we can be more selective of how we choose to engage the world, but also our natural way is a way that is in more harmony with everything. We don't even need to choose because it just is.
Yeah, the problem is that many people, or, we don't realize that we are disconnected from nature because we have been adopting all these narratives and belief systems for so long. With me personally, it started when I visited an executive summary of Singularity University. I worked in tech for a long time. I was a public speaker, keynote speaker for a long time. I worked with many startups in technology and also mobile technology. And then I think it was 2010 or 2011, I went to Singularity University. And there, for the first time, I understood also of like what's the future is going to be. All these technologies are becoming data, or genetics are becoming data, or health systems will become data. Everything is going to be connected, automatization, robotics, AI. And for the first time in my life, I felt very uncomfortable, but I couldn't place it yet. I could not define it yet, but I knew there was something missing. And that missing factor that came out a couple of years later when I understood that I have been always working in the fields of innovation all my lifetime, in art, in music, culture, technology. But I realized I was always innovating on the outside. And I knew that with everything I know, I could not innovate any longer. So I had to start innovating from within. And that's where my
Mm.
personal journey started, like investigating. I went on a sabbatical in the north of Spain. I was living in the UK then, and went on a 6-month sabbatical in a small medieval village by a river. I could meditate by the river every day, and I disconnected from all social media and technology. And there I started investigating myself for the first time. I was in my mid 50s already. I started looking at my trauma, and all the belief systems and everything that comes with it, my addictions and all that. And once you start to go on a journey, it's literally about peeling off layer and layer of what has been, conditioned to us. And until you discover, like, what is my real self? What is within here that wants to live, and create life, So it is a journey.
It is a journey, but it's the greatest adventure there is, in my opinion. It's life's greatest frontier, and on the other side of it, there's a way to engage the world that is full of more wonder and creativity and joy, and it's why we're doing this show, is to hopefully motivate and inspire others. One question, the one thing that I've heard you talk about that I think is really interesting is how so much of the current way that our environment, our business environment operates is an inherited principle from colonialism, which I thought was so interesting because, I think we tend to think that we're pretty advanced as humans, and AI and all this stuff. But when I heard that, I was like, wow, I wonder how many of us are aware that we're operating the same way that we operated before we had cars, before we had planes, before we had any of this stuff. And so I'd love to hear your characterization of our legacy systems and perhaps what a new system might look like.
Well, I think on a very uh, holistic level and large level, we are now in a system that we consider as, the system has also brought us a lot of wealth and a lot of, science and wisdom and technology and a lot of progress. But at the same time, it's also a very limited system. Yeah. So that system was started, I think, in 16th century with Thomas Hobbes, the British philosopher. And then also Descartes in France was about how we separate mind and body. Yeah. So, and we started going in a world of science and analytics and everything, also connected to the business models that was then given by was it the king of the queen of England, that companies could go out and, take the land or take the resources from other places in the world and bring them back. So the start of colonialism, actually. So where also there starts basically the whole extractive type of economy where we are still in. Yeah. So our whole energy system is based on extraction. And now what we see in the world, all the crises we see, is also the limitation of these extractive resources that we are seeing. So, but I think we are also now at the verge of an awakening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is also due to technology, because technology is getting so powerful that it becomes a mirror to us. Yeah, it becomes a mirror to us of like, okay, if technology can do all these things that we were doing as humans, but now basically technology can do that. So what are we going to do then as humans? Yeah. How are we going to spend our time? What are the business models? Yeah. So I think it's great that there is automatization and robots will do all the work, because that's basically all the work that we don't like to do. It's all the very repetitive work. Yeah, the most beautiful jobs in the world are about creation. Yeah, it's about art, it's about music, it's about culture, it's about dance, it's about creating things together. How do we want to live together? But nobody's asking these questions. Nobody's working around these concepts of how can we actually create new things. Yeah. And this is also what we focus on. We don't focus on like blaming others or what is going bad in the world. There's so many things, we can focus on. And of course we need to take responsibility. I think the first thing we need to do is take responsibility of like, how do we stand in the world and how I contribute to that, extraction or waste management, plastic pollution and all that, because we all contribute in a way. We are all consumers. Yeah. So, and the best way is to always start with oneself, I think.
Mm.
So see your own habits, see your own function in society, and how does it really relate to your values and your intentions. Yeah, we work a lot with values and intention. Yeah, what is it that? How do I want to stand in the world? How do I want to contribute in the world? And it's true that the more you open to this, what if you call it a belief system or a new world or whatever, this new connection and deeper connections with others, so many more beautiful things open up to you. And that's the beauty of this new creation and this new world that is currently being formed. Nobody really knows like where we're going, what it is, but we know that it's going in a really good direction from the part of the regenerators. Yeah. So, and of course, there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of people who needs to be transformed or who will have to change the behavior because it's not sustainable any longer in the system that we are in.
Yeah, a few just points of commentary. A lot of people, I reached out to a few people before this conversation and asked questions they had. And a lot of them were asking, well, what are the first things that I can do for my business to be more regenerative? And I think what you're getting at is kind of the more fundamental core concept is when you change yourself, the business changes.
Exactly.
When you uplift your own awareness and you become a loving being that's more in harmony with everything, how you design your business is going to follow. It's kind of the most fundamental substrate. And I think what a lot of us are feeling right now, I don't know if you I guess we can go there. I don't know if you saw a lot of the recent stuff that came out about how COVID was developed by US companies to make money. And there's just lots of disenchantment with government amongst a lot of people that are here. They're doing this work on themselves, yet lots of people in power clearly are operating at a level of consciousness that is not in line with where the world needs to go. And I think there's a sense of discouragement and kind of like, well, when are the people in charge going to get there? And I just would be curious how you think about that situation that we find ourselves in.
I'm totally positive, because I compare a bit the period that we are entering with the 60s. Yeah. The 60s were a time of, tremendous change, tremendous chaos going on also in the world, media entering in every home. People started being informed about the news, what was going on in the world. And at the same time, you had a whole generation of youngsters who did not take any longer the world as it was driven then, by a lot of control and all that. So, and I see a lot of that again now. There's a whole movement of people who really do not agree any longer with what is happening. But by keeping doing the job that you do, you keep contributing. By keeping consuming what you do on a normal basis, you keep contributing. So you really need to change your own behavior to start doing things in a different way. And then you're going to start meeting all these people who are actually starting doing things in a different way. So, and I think that's the core also of new leadership, is that I see a lot of leaders, that were also leaders in technology, that are totally flipping to the other side, that are, starting to buy a land or rent a land and starting to cultivate the soil, create community, building new type of activities, and they still use technology, yeah, but in a different way. We work with startups that are building regenerative AI. We are working with startups that are building decentralized human organization, yeah, or a type of DAO that puts the human back in the center, yeah, because we need to create also new systems. So it's literally like we need to reinvent everything, because everything has been given to us, and in every business model there is still the extractive model of what you pointed to as colonialism, because it's about extraction. It's about like, I'm smarter than you, or I have something that you don't have, and I'm going to make profit out of that, yeah, which is okay. I don't mind profit, but there is a way also of like, what we don't capture in GTP and all the measurement models that we have, we don't capture the well-being of the planet. We don't capture the well-being of people. We don't capture the well-being of animals and the the bio elements of life and all that. So what is that cost also of like just extracting and making profit and making money and everything is great, but we leave a mess behind. And this is just talking about our generation. What about future generations? Our children, our grandchildren. There used to be there is an indigenous activity which they call seventh generation principle, yeah, and which is a principle that you cannot take any decision if it does not harm somebody 7 generations later. Right? So don't do something that will harm somebody 7 generations later. Yeah. And that's a very healthy principle. So just think about that for a minute, right? So, yeah.
I was going to say, I think a lot of people aren't going to be able to do anything if we're living in that principle.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? So because we just think about ourselves and we come out of this society of pure individualism. Yeah. So, and now what is also changing is that we are moving towards more communal models. I take responsibility in my own location, and I work with I rebuild my relationships with my own community. And from there, we start doing things differently. And you see that already reflecting here in Europe in many cities, with neighborhood committees and all that. They take their own action in their own hand, and they send the proposals to the city hall and all that, and then they make agreements with the city hall. So you see that already in Amsterdam, in Barcelona, cities like Lisbon and all that. So where literally the communities are taking back their power from the centralized power. And that's why also I believe a lot in decentralization of power of communities. Yeah. So because, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most interesting books that I've read is that I think is kind of starting to play out before our eyes is The Sovereign Individual. I don't know if you've read that, but it's more effectively talking about the decentralization of the nation state, where at one point in time, when we needed things like protection from people that were going to come and kill us and raid our territory, we made this trade with the government where we would give them our resources and then they would give us protection, and it was a fair trade. And more in modern society, it seems like there has become a growing gap in what we're getting relative to what we need and what we're giving. For example, many Americans don't really care that the U.S. is out patrolling all of the waters in the world to basically have the maximum extraction equation. And so what that looks like is people spending less less of their resources and have less of allegiance to their country and more of an allegiance to a community that aligns with their own values. And I think this is kind of what you're seeing with some DAOs, and that starts to get into the world of, well, what do we do for food? What do we do for protection? How are all of these things that we've relied upon this? What do we do for school? Like, how do we bring all of these things into a more aligned, tighter knit experience? And just amongst my own peer groups, I think about a lot of us how we want to homeschool our kids, a lot of us how we want to grow our own food because the food system is so unsatisfying. And it just is clear to me that that is where things are going, and it makes you start to question what is the role of a country, you know, what that it, again, is kind of an artificial separation element that we've created that seems like it might not be working as well as it once did.
Yeah. In the first place, we are all humans, right? If we could all accept that, then, then we can also think about all the rights that we have been given, all rights also that we have been receiving, in a privileged way. So our luxury, our comfort, our wealth comes from also exploiting other nations, other peoples, and all that. So at some point, I think in the future there will be no countries. And I think that technologies will also contribute to that. Because before it was about, protection, physical protection and all that, which countries still give. And now we are still like in this outburst of violence and war in Russia and authoritarian regimes, which are still holding on to that control, which I consider that control of the old world. Because they try to hold on to their resources, to what they have, and they try to maximize that, and it's purely ego-driven. But if we follow that concept, and we can go talk further on artificial intelligence and all that, like whether an AI would advise that to anyone, from a human perspective, you could not do it because it's destructive, right? If you would keep on doing that, at some point there will be no more resources, etc., or there would be one survivor, that would need to kill all the others. So that doesn't work, right? So we will have to find a way to live in harmony and peace on this planet, and shooting people to Mars is not going to work either, So that's another form of like, okay, we're going to find more resources there that we can exploit, for the future here. So it's all linked to the same model of like, the Europeans went to America, they arrived in the East and they conquered the whole West, and they arrived in San Francisco and there was no more way to go, and then they went up, right? This is how we see it here. But that's it, right? We are in this false belief system of growth. That growth is good. And I don't say that growth is not good. I think as an individual, we want to grow. We want our comfort to grow. And it's a natural given that we always look for something to improve our lives. But at what cost? And I think this is the balance exercise that we need to do probably this coming decade, because to me, regeneration is not just a buzzword. People say, oh, it's buzzing, everybody talks about regeneration, but it's a paradigm shift. It's as much a paradigm shift as technology kicked into our lives. And technology is also a construct of nature, because we come out of nature and we invented technology. So it's part of us. So the only thing is we have to start learning and weaving with it, in a balanced way that is creating beautiful life and good life instead of hate and fear and mongering and all these things. So, and for that, it's about, I think in the future, a lot about who owns the story. Who owns the story of what will be told, And that's also what we see now. If you see the countries that are in conflict, are the countries where the story has been manipulated by someone, or those stories are held by media empires that are controlling that narrative. So what if we could change that narrative, right? So that's
Yeah,
the battle of the future to me, so
you're so right. You're so right. I heard. I saw Jack Dorsey tweet. I guess he's kind of getting back on Twitter, and he tweeted, "Whoever controls the media controls the mind." And I think when you do the consciousness work, what you realize that you've just had all these ideas imprinted on you that essentially create a conceptual layer in which you experience the world, and you start to unwind all that. You start to realize you're like, wow, like what I consume has a really big impact on my experience. That's why I think, as I've heard you talk about before, lots of people that are into consciousness, they don't go on social media because it's like garbage in, garbage out. And I think you're so right that there's going to be a need for uh, more accountability in media, and people honestly being disenchanted with media. And I think the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is like, in this world where you can't trust the media, where do you go for answers? I mean, even quote unquote scientific studies are often agenda driven. And for me, what I've come to experience, and I'd be curious about you, is it's it's inward. It's the only source that is true, right? Is when you quiet the mind or you get into a peaceful place, you go in nature and you ask yourself, and if you're able to kind of remove all of those layers of programming, you'll be surprised at how accurate of a compass exists inside of yourself. And I think that is almost like our superpower weapon, our internal AI, if you will, as we move into this phase of just trying to navigate what increasingly feels like you know calamitous environment as it pertains to what can we actually believe, what is true in terms of what is being created out there.
yeah, exactly. And disconnecting from technology is probably the best we can do. The most happy people I know in my life, they're totally not on technology. They're totally disconnected from technology. Yes, they are using WhatsApp groups in their own communities, but they're totally disconnected from news and social media. So,
Yeah.
and that's also, I do a lot of work with men also, with my project UnconditionalMen, where we let men actually connect to their authentic self. And one of the first things that we do is tell them to stop watching the news, stop watching social media. Yeah. And just focus on your own and your connection with nature. And then natural happiness starts emerging, because you just start connecting to your own inner self and what is emerging from here, from within. Yeah. Because in the old world or old concepts and belief systems, we always thought that we are above nature. We can control anything. Yeah, which is okay. We can control a lot of things, but that's not the way of nature. Yeah, so the new concept is like that we are part of nature. We can function as nature. We work with nature. Yeah, not using it or extracting it, or so. And this is the regenerative way of thinking. Yeah, so and it's all about how can we basically infuse our cities back with nature, how we can create clean transport, or clean air, how can we bring our souls back to life, how can we create locally renewable energy systems that are entirely uh, zero net zero positive, so. And how can we also use all the old wisdom from indigenous tribes. We have like all what you mentioned, like the way it's inward is like thousands of years of ancient wisdom from the east, and all the indigenous wisdom from the tribes in the Amazonia, or even Australia, or the or aboriginals in every country, in every region, in every culture, there is indigenous wisdom. And that's thousands of years of wisdom that we just throw away. Yeah. So, and we have been changing that. So now what is happening also with a lot of these communities is that just that reconnection with that self and nature and these ancient technologies, what we call the ancient technologies. So, and there also naturally, these indigenous tribes, they live with nature. They consider nature as something that is given to them, that they can work with. And that creates a lot of abundance for them if they treat it well. If you look at all the food systems and regenerative food systems from indigenous tribes, it's amazing what they have been creating. Yeah. If you look at the Amazon and some tribes, they have cultures of 2,000 different type of plants, medicinal plants. Yeah. But they have been created over thousands of years. They have been cultivated. Yeah. So now we have all this richness there that now all the genetic companies are going there to try to patent this and this type of medicine, in a way again of like, oh, this is mine. And I'm going to try to make that work in the old world, which is, I think that world is really, it's crumbling apart. And the more we look at it, I think you see a lot of still more powerful companies that become more powerful because they're still in that scheme of taking, taking, taking. But at a certain point, there's nothing more to take any longer. And that is, I think, that insight and awareness is starting to bubble up with a lot of young people and a lot of people that are switching towards that regenerative mindset.
I can't help but think about how the corporate narrative mirrors the individual consciousness journey, where I can't tell you how many people started to get into working on their awareness, their spirituality, after they had seemingly got everything that they wanted. They had, most success, the relationship, the status, all of it, and they kind of looked around and they still felt empty. And it was either an experience like that or an experience of their existing reality frame that broke it, which made them start to realize, wait a second, maybe things aren't the way that I think that they are, and start to go inward. And to be honest, that transitional period is very difficult. It's very painful to have that transformation, or it can be, but it needs to happen because there is no other way. As you said, it's like you've done all that you can do in that model and it didn't work, and so you have to change. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to see how that starts to express at a more system level and company level. And it just is obvious that will be the case if the humans are changing, which are the more fundamental substrate. Are there companies or communities or countries that you think are great exemplars of this paradigm shift that you often point people to?
I'm not sure if it's country related. I think it's happening everywhere. Yeah. There's a lot of youngsters and regions, maybe in certain regions, it's probably also happening. For example, Ibiza, we moved to Ibiza because we saw Ibiza as the lab for the future of humanity. Because you have a lot of technology people, a lot of creative people, a lot of people from holistic health, spirituality, all the indigenous people from all over the world, they pass there to, share their wisdom. And so it becomes this hub of like all these ingredients, what you need to actually prepare for the future are happening there. At the same time, young tech entrepreneurs, they decide to change the land and start growing their own food, create their own local food distribution system, with sharing resources and all that. And it's amazing what is happening. So, but I think on the core, what you mentioned is like, we need to move from like self-awareness towards system awareness. And that is
Mm,
a part in the journey or a step in the journey that only happens after a while, because our whole conditioning has been also about feeding the ego.
yes.
It's all about feeding the ego, and our ego or have become so strong that we literally need to dismantle that ego or become aware of like who's operating me. Is it really me or is it my ego? Or who is that person that is, operating me? So, and these are all the systems that have been conditioned up to us. So, and that is a big part of the work, and that's also what you see in a lot of people who go into spirituality or they go on their journey. It's about self transformation. But the self transformation is still a lot about self transformation and self purpose and my own contribution and all that. Well, the real deal is really when you can move into system, awareness and system change, that you start seeing that, okay, when I really start serving the others, when I start serving the greater good, when I start serving to nature, uh, then that is, then I start contributing to system change, because it's all related, right? So you cannot unlock one thing from the other. It's really everything is related. So
Yeah, I often find it helpful to look at various kind of unified models of consciousness that have been created to really help people just understand the various expressions of the human journey. And, if we think about something like spiral dynamics, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. There's a level of experience where the focus goes from I to we. And I think that, and then you have experiences like non-duality where the concept of separation is actually non-existent. And that continuum, I think, is really, really, really interesting for people to contemplate as they think about, how will our society change, because it is a complete mirror. And you know what you realize, and you're so right, is that like these systems, it's based on the ego. And what is the ego based on? It's based on fear. If we as a society had the mindset and the belief of trusting that we are provided for, there wouldn't be such a compulsion to maximize, to extract, and we would be in harmony. And we got some work to do. we got some work to do, but I am with you that it is encouraging that so many young people are starting to recognize this, and old people. I think that's another important thing I want just to listen. It's like my mom, for example. We talk a lot about change and my journey, and I encourage her journey. And I think sometimes people get discouraged where, oh, well, I'm already this way. I've been doing this so long. And I think you're an inspiration where it sounds like you were 50 years old when you started to make a lot of these shifts. And so it's never too late to start the journey and to start to have an impact and grow and contribute.
yeah, and I think also that you cannot really change other people, right? They need to see it themselves or they need to experience it themselves. So, but I'm also convinced that the older systems and the way the old systems operate, they continue to crumble. And people in their personal life, they will face situations that they will face themselves, or they will have to face like, whoa, this is not working any longer. And that's basically where transformation starts. Yeah. So uh, I see that a lot of the work with men also, and my wife does works with the heroines with women, and then we do retreats actually where we do work separately, and then we bring them together, and people ask us like, but why do you do the work separately? And it's because men and women have a very different need of transforming and doing things. For example, men, they have to learn to feel. A lot of men, they just don't feel any longer. We're just
Yes.
operating from the mind. Yeah. So, and when you do circles and when you do work with men, the first thing we let them do is to try to express themselves, try to express them feelings. So, for example, if you leave 6 to 10 men alone in a room, they're going to start arguing after 5 minutes. Yeah. Why? Because they're all opinionated. And one says this, the other says that, and this and that, and off they go. Yeah. So, but when you put them in a circle, and we use a couple of guidelines where we don't let them operate from the mind, but we just let them express their feelings or what they feel, not what they think about Trump, but how does he make them feel, for example, yeah, or this situation or that situation. So, and then you get an entire different discussion. And then many men, they express different feelings, different life stories, because every man always thinks that he has the worst story of his life. There's always somebody who has a four verses story, for example. So, and that's how we learn also from each other. That's how we learn to be compassionate with each other, and that it's not about competition only. We can create a different world. Yeah, we also apply other methods like Socratic dialogue, where you need to be able, before you can speak, you need to be able to repeat what the person before you said. And most people cannot do that any longer because nobody's listening. They are just listening to their inner dialogue, like what I'm going to say to counter this idea, or how can I come out well, and this and that. So, and it's a session with a moderator. So once they get that picture, they really start building on each other's wisdom. And after a while, you get that feeling of real, truly collective intelligence that is generated from that group, instead of just opinions being pinpointed at each other. And that's what we need to get to. So this is also from your own connection to your own authentic self, to what's that authentic field within our group here. What do we want from life? Where do we want to go with this community? How are others influencing our life? What do we need to do to prepare for that? Or what is it that we want? How can we, be the role model for everybody else?
That's so well said. And I have to agree with you about what's needed for men right now. And I love that you're doing that with RegenerateX and UnconditionalMen. I went to a men's retreat called Junto that my friend Andrew Horn runs here in the US. And we did this thing where every time we sat down together, we would all go around and feel into our bodies and actually put language to the emotion that we were feeling. And what became very clear is that for a lot of people in that room is that they don't feel, and they don't actually have relationships, whether that's their partner or whether that's their friends, where they can express those feelings. And so they essentially remain unexpressed. And you go through your whole life this way. And it's all of that unexpressed emotion just accumulates and accumulates and accumulates until it explodes, or you get sick or something else happens. And I think what I took away from that is how valuable the container is for those experiences for men, because it's not that men don't have the emotions or they're not capable. We just haven't, as a society, made it normal for men to behave that way. We haven't created containers that say, hey, it's safe. This is you're actually doing a good job when you're expressing your emotions. And it inspired me to go seek out a men's group in my own life, because I feel like I crave more depth of experience, and I crave more of those type of, true intimacy moments with other men. And, it's not the default model of how I found myself relating with other men, which is, talking about business, talking about working out, basically talking about all the stuff the ego loves, so that it can feel like it's enough. And I think it's, for anybody out there listening, Rudy, I would love for you to share more info on some of the men's groups, where people can find men's group work. Both, it sounds like, in Europe and the US and wherever, because I just see it as such a vital part of the equation that more and more people would get a lot of benefit from.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a lot of men's work happening. So we do our work locally in Ibiza and also online programs with Unconditional Men. But there's men's groups everywhere, and there's a lot of groups that you can connect to, that you can start a conversation. But I like to compare our work with like the roots from a tree. What is happening below the soil is entirely invisible, but it's there where the roots of the tree is sourcing its water. It's there where all the mycelium connects, where trees are communicating with other trees. And the invisible work that we are doing is also, that's the most important work for the future, because under that soil is also the life of anything created on this planet. Anything created on this planet comes from that soil. Yeah. So, or then it comes out of space, of course. Yeah. And the combination with meteorites coming on our planet. But but that's also everything. The society that we're in is all about measurement. Everything needs to be measured. Everything needs to grow. But the most important work is not really measurable. Yes, after a while, we also will have statistics and metrics of like how men have transformed, or maybe their wife will say like, "Oh, my man really, he became, back into his responsibility, took care of things, and move forward." Or I cannot tell you how many people, and the statistics are tremendous, of like mental health and burnout. Today I read a statistic here in Belgium: 1 out of 5 youngsters is depressed. I mean, 1 out of 5. And that's mainly because of the news and what they do on social media and all this culture of comparison and all that. So I think the most important work of the future is really doing that invisible work of like bringing back the connection with self and others, because that's the connection where you feel life again. You feel alive. You feel loved. Doing things in community is the most rewarding things you can do. So, and whether that's an online community or local community, it doesn't really matter, but it has to be from that place of honesty, that place of truth. Truth doesn't lie. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, because I imagine there's a lot of people that they feel like they do have a community, right? And they are doing things. And I think it's a combination of reconnecting and redefining self, and then allowing that to express outwards in the world and community in a new way. And it's definitely a journey, but it's the most interesting one that you could ever go on, in my opinion. And Rudy, I think we'll come to a close now, and we're so grateful for you, man. It's just so fun to have these conversations, and so amazing to hear about all the stuff that you're doing. Maybe we could just take a second and, for folks that are interested in RegenerateX and the work that you do, tell them where they could go and learn more. And if you have anything upcoming that you think is really interesting, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the links are basically regeneratex.co. And we also have a newsletter, regeneratex.substack.com, and unconditionalmen.com. Yeah, for the men's
Great
work.
URL.
Yeah. And then my wife, she has the heroines.co. Yeah, for the work with women. And then there you can see all our activities. In our newsletter, we also write about projects that we work on, there's a whole community of also entrepreneurs that are all working towards this new world, or, in this regenerative field, where we talk about partners, influencers, thought leaders. So now we just have a retreat in Ibiza, which is called Heart Masters, where we bring thought leaders actually together to co-create, to go through a transformation process together during a couple of days, and then we co-create. So I used to do a lot of conferences, and I was a keynote speaker, and I don't believe any longer in this one-to-many model. I know it all, and I'm going to tell it to the others. So what we try to do with Heart Masters is really bring people from different backgrounds, cultures together, go through this process together, and then we co-create, not from the mind any longer, but from the heart. And then tomorrow there's a conference day also in Ibiza, where we then also have more talks and dialogues, and where we do workshops where we co-create on different topics like regenerative city design, regenerative communities, regenerative AI, and stuff like that. So
It sounds amazing. And yeah, who wouldn't want to do that in a beautiful setting like Ibiza?
yeah,
So
and I hope to welcome you there soon, because it is an amazing place. So if you come to Europe, let me know.
I love it. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Rudy. It's been a pleasure spending time with everyone today, and we're grateful for you. And we will see you on the next episode.